My mom texted me, "We changed the locks, you don't live here anymore." 2 days later, their lawyer called and said, "She's got everything documented." This could end really badly. Imagine walking into your childhood home, a place you think you know inside and out, only to overhear your own parents casually discussing how they're going to sell it out from under you, dismissing your years of financial support as mere gifts. My blood ran cold in that moment, and I knew my life and my family would never be the same. So, picture this. I was actually having a pretty good day. A rare canceled meeting in Spokane meant I suddenly had free time, a total luxury for a financial analyst whose calendar is usually color-coded down to the minute. I thought, hey, I'll surprise Mom. I even picked up her favorite artisan bread. I eased the front door shut, smiling at the familiar, decades-old creak of that one hinge Dad always promised to fix. My footsteps were soft on the worn carpet as I headed for the kitchen, feeling genuinely happy. Then I heard it. My name. Once the appraisal clears, we can list it. And then, the kicker. Brooklyn's payments were gifts. My mom's voice. Just floating out of the kitchen, calm as if she was discussing the weather. I froze. Mid-step. That bakery bag crinkled in my hand, suddenly tight, almost painful. Then Dad chuckled, that familiar sound now laced with something off. She doesn't even keep receipts. And then my sister, Lacey, her voice hesitant, a little scared, but what if she finds out? I stood there, absolutely rooted to the spot. My pulse? Steady. Incredibly, my body stayed calm, even as an earthquake of betrayal rumbled through my core. It's funny how that works. Your brain can just shatter, but your body keeps going. My financial analyst brain, the one that usually helps me make sense of everything, immediately started cataloging facts. My heart? It was struggling, trying to catch up to the horror. My fingers instinctively found the doorframe. I gripped it so hard my knuckles went white. I could feel the wood grain digging into my palm. This house I knew by heart, this house I've been paying for. 7 years. $92,000. All of it, I thought, just temporary help until they got back on their feet. Just last week, that $1,700 mortgage payment notification had pinged on my phone while I was getting coffee. I'd transferred the money without a second thought. Just like clockwork. Just like family does. Suddenly, the fog lifted. Everything clicked into place with a blinding, winter sunlight clarity. All those little suspicious moments? They crystallized. The weird glances when I'd suggest refinancing options. The real estate pamphlets tucked under magazines. The oddly specific questions about property values that I'd stupidly brushed off as just casual conversation. My stomach lurched. Oh, my God. See, growing up in that perfectly tidy, 3-bedroom craftsman home, I was always the family workhorse. Always. At 15, my dad was handing me power tools, calling it character building. I'd be up on the roof, replacing shingles, while Lacey, my sister, stayed inside, getting praised for her delicate nature. And my mom? Her favorite phrase, the one that's haunted me for years, was always family helps family. The problem? That help always flowed in one direction, from me to them. I basically built my entire adult identity around being reliable. My apartment in Seattle has a desk with spreadsheets so meticulously organized, they track every single expense. Every penny. I skipped vacations, wore last year's winter coat until it was threadbare, all to make those temporary payments possible. While they got new kitchen countertops. I never questioned it, not really. Because I desperately wanted their approval. I needed to be the good daughter. The responsible one. The one they could count on. Suddenly, a floorboard beneath my foot let out a loud creak. Damn it. Mom appeared in the hallway, her face flushing red with surprise. Brooklyn, we weren't expecting you. Her hands fluttered nervously to her necklace, the one I'd bought her for Christmas. Oh, we were just discussing some paperwork. The words that came out of my mouth surprised even me, unfamiliar in their directness. No. You were discussing selling the house I've been paying for. She blinked rapidly, her mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. Then Dad appeared behind her, his tall frame filling the doorway. Don't be dramatic, he said, waving a hand dismissively. Your help was a gift. That word. Gift. It landed like a physical slap across my face. Mom, ever the quick thinker, recovered fast, pivoting to her familiar territory. After all we've done raising you. She started, her voice dripping with practiced guilt. Lacey hovered behind them, shrinking into herself, refusing to meet my eyes. Just like she always did when we were kids, and I took the blame for all her broken dishes. For a moment, just a split second, a sliver of doubt snaked into my mind. Maybe I misunderstood? Maybe there's a rational explanation that doesn't mean my entire family has been using me as their personal ATM while planning to cut me out? Then I remembered the exact words. Brooklyn's payments were gifts. My spine straightened. My financial analyst mind, now fully in high gear, was already calculating how to document every single dollar I'd ever contributed. My breathing steadied. My thoughts sharpened. I'll be in touch, I said quietly, turning toward the door. Brooklyn, wait. Mom called out, genuine panic finally in her voice. She'd never seen me walk away from a family confrontation before. But I kept walking, my footsteps measured and calm. I placed the forgotten bakery bag of artisan bread on the entry table, a final, pathetic offering to a shrine that never deserved my devotion. Outside, the November air bit at my cheeks. I slid behind the wheel of my sensible sedan, the one with the high mileage and deferred maintenance. The engine hummed to life, and I pulled away from the curb, glancing one last time at that Craftsman porch. The same porch where I'd spent summers sanding and staining, while Lacey lounged with lemonade. The drive back to Seattle stretched before me. But for the first time in years, that long road felt like freedom. Not an escape. Freedom. The next day, Seattle rain lashed against my apartment windows. I didn't care. My desk was buried under financial records. Each statement, each bank transfer was another piece of this horrifying puzzle, showing 7 years of money flowing directly to my parents. Regular as clockwork. And growing bigger with every promotion I earned. Then I clicked into an email folder I'd labeled Family Finances, and I froze. There, staring back at me, was an email from Dad to Mom. Accidentally copied to my work address 3 months ago. My eyes locked onto the words. Words that confirmed my absolute worst suspicions. Once we sell, we can finally stop relying on Brooklyn's checks. My fingers trembled. I opened a mortgage statement I'd requested last week. The principal balance. It hadn't decreased. Not one single dollar, despite my $92,000 in contributions. Every payment had just vanished. Into interest. Or into their pockets. Never actually reducing the loan. Then the property tax documents arrived, county letterhead screaming the betrayal. Only their names appeared as owners. Not mine. Never mine. All those years. The new roof I'd financed and installed with my own hands. The plumbing repairs that had drained my vacation fund. The work I'd paid for when the inspector found code violations. It meant nothing. I grabbed my calculator. My hands were steady now. I was just tallying. Direct transfers. $92,000 over 7 years. Unpaid labor for home improvements? Conservatively, $38,000. The numbers glowed back at me cold. Undeniable. A pattern emerged with agonizing clarity. Every single financial request had coincided perfectly with my salary increases. The ask for roof money? 2 days after I'd mentioned my promotion. The plumbing emergency? The week my bonus cleared. You're the smart one, Brooklyn. You understand money, Mom would purr, her voice warm with practiced flattery, just before the request. We're so proud of how responsible you are. And then the guilt. Always the guilt. Family helps family. Remember how we sacrificed for your education. I was so blind. I never noticed how that obligation only ever flowed one way. My phone buzzed, vibrating against the desk. It was 11:42 p.m. A text from Mom. We changed the locks. You don't live here anymore. Let's see how independent you really are. That message should have hurt. Should have sent me spiraling. Instead, a strange relief washed over me. Confirmation. I wasn't imagining their betrayal. This was real. I typed out a simple response. Message received. Thank you for the clarity. No tears came. No emotional breakdown. Just a clean, surgical kind of clarity. They didn't just change a lock, I realized, slowly shutting my laptop. They had shut the very last door that tied me to them. It hit me then. My mother. She orchestrated everything. Each perfectly timed guilt trip. Each request wrapped in sugary compliments. Each subtle, insidious comparison to my delicate sister, Lacey, who always needed protection, while I, Brooklyn, needed to toughen up. She was the primary betrayer. She designed this perfect, predatory system to extract maximum value from her responsible daughter. And Dad? He executed her plans. He managed the money, always discussing investments, but never, ever providing statements. His easy charm disarmed my questions before they could even form. The supportive player, making the whole scheme work. Morning light found me still at my desk. My phone pinged. A notification. A real estate listing appeared on my screen. Their house. Our house. My investment. Listed $40,000 above market value, with professional photos that must have been taken weeks ago. They were accelerating. Now that I knew, without legal intervention, I would lose everything I'd poured into that house. I slid open the bottom desk drawer, the one that always sticks unless you lift it just right. Inside, a green folder. Labeled, Family Contributions. Every single receipt for materials. Every bank transfer confirmation. Text messages requesting funds. All of it. Meticulously saved by the financial analyst who, deep down, never quite trusted the arrangement. Even though she desperately wanted to. My phone buzzed again. My coworker, Janet. Still on for lunch? Bringing Richard? He's that property attorney I mentioned. Perfect timing. Yes, I texted back. Reservation at 12:30. I forwarded Mom's lock-changing text to Janet's lawyer friend with a simple question. Does this help establish intent? His response came minutes later. Absolutely. Bring everything you have. My browser quickly filled with tabs. Property law, constructive trusts, unjust enrichment. Terms I never, ever thought I'd need for my own family. My friend Morgan called, her voice thick with concern. You okay? You never miss our Sunday coffee. When I explained, she didn't hesitate. My guest room is yours if you need it. As long as it takes. The bank manager confirmed they could provide certified records of all transfers. My stomach tightened when the attorney, Richard, quoted his retainer, $5,000. Almost my entire emergency fund. We have a strong case for equitable ownership, he explained after reviewing my documents. This pattern of financial manipulation is unfortunately common. I've seen it before. His paralegal filed initial paperwork that afternoon, a temporary injunction preventing the sale before resolution. As I signed that retainer check, Richard asked if I was okay. I'm fine, I answered, surprised to find it was mostly true. I just learned my family relationship was purely transactional. Now I'm handling it like a transaction. The check left my hand, officially converting my safety net into a legal battle. But for the first time in 7 years, my money was finally working for me instead of them. 3 days later, it arrived. The cease and desist letter. On expensive, cream-colored stationery, the law firm's embossed letterhead gleaming under my kitchen lights. Oh, the irony. My parents never spared expenses when it came to protecting themselves. You are hereby instructed to cease all defamatory communications regarding the property at 1742 Elmwood Drive. The formal language was such a stark contrast to the tearful, hysterical voicemails my mother had been leaving. Legal threats. The ultimate admission that my silence terrified them more than any words I could ever say. My phone buzzed again. Uncle Robert. This time. The fifth family intervention call that day. Brooklyn. Honey, how could you do this to your own parents? His voice held that familiar, disappointed tone, as if I were still 8 years old with scraped knees from climbing too high. After everything they've done for you. I closed my eyes, focusing on my breathing. Everything they've done for me, or everything I've done for them. This isn't about money, he added, trying a different angle. You're right, I replied, the calm in my voice surprising even me. It isn't. It's about recognition. It's about truth. He sighed heavily. Your mother is devastated. Your father can't sleep. I thought about the mortgage statements stacked neatly in my filing cabinet. 7 years of payments. $92,000. I'm sure they'll find comfort in their new kitchen countertops, the ones I paid for, I thought. After he hung up, I opened Instagram, against my better judgment. Lacey's latest post showed her on our parents' porch swing, looking pensive. Family is everything, the caption read. Heartbroken that someone would choose money over love. 27 sympathetic comments. From people who'd never seen the transfer receipts. The doorbell interrupted my scrolling. A courier. With more documents from my parents' attorney. According to the inventory list, they'd already started selling furniture from the house, including the antique desk my grandfather had left specifically to me. I placed the papers on my kitchen table, next to the spreadsheets I'd been meticulously working on for weeks. Column after column of dates, amounts, email screenshots, text message exchanges. My entire financial history with my parents, documented with the same precision I brought to my corporate analyses. My boss, Grace, called while I was inputting the latest data point. Brooklyn, take whatever time you need, she said, after I explained the latest development. The Johnson portfolio can wait. I appreciate that, I told her, grateful for her understanding. But work keeps me grounded. Though I might need flexibility for court appearances. You've got it, she said. And the company attorney asked me to give you this number, a property specialist who took his case pro bono last year. Said she's brilliant. I jotted down the number, a wave of gratitude tempering my anger. While my blood relatives marshaled their forces against me, my chosen family was building scaffolding around my fragile determination. Later that evening, I was picking up documents from Martin, a friend who works in property assessment, when I literally bumped into Lacey at the entrance to a coffee shop. Her eyes widened with recognition, then narrowed with pure hostility. Well, if it isn't the money-hungry daughter, she sneered, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I instinctively stepped back, creating space between us. Lacey, you're tearing this family apart over money. Her voice cracked, a flicker of genuine emotion breaking through the performance. How could you do this to Mom and Dad? They gave you everything. For a split second, I saw the little sister who followed me everywhere, who braided my hair with clumsy fingers, who cried when I left for college. Then, like a punch to the gut, I remembered that kitchen conversation. Her hesitant question. But what if she finds out? This isn't about money, I replied, my voice steady, despite the slight tremor in my hands. It's about recognizing my contribution. Something shifted in her expression. Guilt, maybe. They're our parents, Brooklyn. They raised us. And I've been raising them financially for 7 years. I met her gaze directly. How long have you known what they were doing? She glanced away. Confirmation enough. That's what I thought. I moved past her toward the door, but paused. Oh, they're selling Grandpa's desk, by the way. The one he wanted me to have. I walked to my car and immediately dialed the number Grace had given me. Richard's office smelled of lemon polish and old books. Unlike the other lawyers I'd consulted, he didn't use a laptop. He spread my documents across his massive oak desk, studying them with the intensity of someone deciphering ancient maps. You've documented everything, he said, genuinely impressed. Bank transfers, text confirmations, email exchanges. I'm a financial analyst, I explained. Record keeping is second nature. He nodded, tapping a particularly damning email exchange. And they explicitly acknowledged these payments were toward the mortgage? Every month. For 7 years. He sat back, studying me. You have a strong case for equitable ownership. Your consistent financial contributions. Their explicit acknowledgement of the purpose. Your sweat equity and home improvements. He tapped his pen against the desk. But I need you to understand something crucial. I leaned forward. This felt like the turning point. Don't confront them. Don't warn them. Paper is your weapon. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. We file the injunction stopping the sale. We document the harassment. We prepare for court. Let them make the first aggressive move. Common analysis, I murmured, a faint smile touching my lips. For the first time since discovering their betrayal, I felt the ground solidify beneath me. I understand. You have leverage they don't expect, he continued. They see you as the dutiful daughter who'll eventually cave to family pressure. They don't see the financial expert perfectly equipped to dismantle their manipulation. Walking out of his office, it hit me with startling clarity. My parents hadn't just taken advantage of my generosity. They had committed financial manipulation. And I had the records to prove it. When I got home, a package waited by my door. Inside, a family photo, with my face cut out. The jagged edges spoke volumes about my mother's state of mind. That sight, it punched right through my analytical armor. I sank to the floor, finally allowing myself to grieve the family relationship that had never truly existed. My therapist's words from our emergency session echoed in my mind. This isn't revenge, Brooklyn. It's justice. Night after night, I built my case. Digital archives of every transaction. Financial impact calculations down to the penny. Voice memos detailing their verbal promises. A timeline revealing the escalating, predatory pattern of their demands. My phone pinged constantly with messages I didn't answer. My mother's desperate pleas. My father's thinly veiled threats. Lacey's emotional guilt trips. I forwarded each one to Richard, my attorney, without a single response. I was building my paper fortress, while they hammered at gates that no longer existed. Let them make the first aggressive move, Richard had advised. So I waited, wrapped in strategic silence, preparing formal responses to their increasingly desperate actions. A week after forwarding a particularly nasty text from my father to Richard, I received a formal notice from their lawyer. They were requesting mediation. I allowed myself a small wry smile. Finally, they were respecting boundaries through legal counsel. Opening my laptop, I clicked on the folder containing even more emails I'd been saving. The ones where my parents discuss me as their free money source. The ones where they brazenly plan the sale while calculating exactly how much more they could extract from me before cutting ties. My phone rang. It was Richard. "We've been assigned to Judge Winters," he said, excitement bleeding through his professional tone. "She specializes in family financial abuse cases." For the first time in weeks, I felt the corners of my mouth lift in something resembling hope. The next day, Richard's law office smelled of lemon polish and expensive cologne. Richard Wallace, my attorney, spread documents across his massive mahogany desk while I reviewed our filing one last time. A 35% equitable interest, I stated, tapping the highlighted section. Based on documented contributions of $92,000 over 7 years. Richard nodded, his silver hair catching the morning light. "The motion to prevent property sale during litigation is ready. Once filed, they can't sell without court approval." I slid the financial forensic analysis across to him. My masterpiece. 7 years of bank transfers, text messages about payments, even photos of me repairing the roof. Each piece of evidence meticulously organized into an undeniable pattern of intentional manipulation. "This is impressive work, Brooklyn," Richard said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Most clients bring me shoebox receipts. You've built a case that would make a forensic accountant proud." "I am a financial analyst," I reminded him with a small, wry smile. "Numbers don't lie, even when people do." The deposition requests. They felt like declarations of war. Mom, Dad, Lacey. Each name typed in clean black letters, each requiring specific documents I knew they never expected me to demand. My hand hovered over the signature line. 7 years of being the family ATM flashed through my mind. Christmas presents I couldn't afford, vacations I never took, the threadbare winter coat I mended instead of replaced. All while they meticulously planned to sell the house right out from under me. I signed my name. My fingers were steady. "Let's file today," I said. 3 days later, Richard's call woke me at 6 a.m. I shot upright in bed, sleep evaporating instantly. "They've counterfiled," he said, without preamble. "They're claiming all transfers were gifts between family members." My stomach tightened, but my voice remained level. "We expected that." "Their lawyer found a technical error in our initial filing," he continued. "The property parcel number has a digit transposed." The implications sank in. "So, the prevention order. Temporarily suspended while we correct the paperwork," Richard finished. And Brooklyn. They're accelerating the sale. The house goes on market next Tuesday. Cold washed through me. But panic wouldn't help. I breathed deeply, counting to 5, just like Dr. Martinez had taught me. We'll file an emergency correction today, I said, already swinging my legs off the bed. And request an expedited hearing based on imminent sale threat. It might not be enough, Richard warned. Courts move slowly. Their lawyer is good. Margaret Winters. We'll make it enough, I answered. Calculation replaced fear. I'll be at your office in an hour. We'll work through the night if necessary. 3 days later, the elevator mirror at Richard's office showed dark circles under my eyes. I'd slept maybe 4 hours in 2 days, preparing for this hearing. The thought of standing in front of a judge, facing my own family, sent anxiety crawling up my spine. I practiced Dr. Martinez's grounding technique. 5 things I could see, 4 I could touch, 3 I could hear. The courthouse loomed ahead, all marble and judgment. Ready? Richard asked as we climbed the steps. No, I admitted. But I'm going anyway. Inside, Mom, Dad, and Lacey sat huddled with Margaret Winters, a sharp-featured woman in a tailored suit. Mom's gaze landed on me, her expression shifting from surprise to calculated sympathy. The courtroom gallery was packed with familiar faces, family, friends they'd invited to witness my humiliation. I straightened my shoulders. I slid into professional mode. This is just another financial presentation, I told myself. Numbers. Facts. Evidence. My training to analyze data without emotion became my superpower. Judge Reynolds entered, a stern woman with practical shoes and shrewd eyes that missed nothing. The proceedings began with dry legal formalities until Margaret Winters took center stage. Your Honor, she began smoothly, this is simply a family dispute. The plaintiff contributed to household expenses as any family member might, with no expectation of property interest. Richard countered. We have evidence of a pattern showing the Harris family solicited specific funds for mortgage payments while secretly planning property liquidation. A murmur rippled through the gallery as he mentioned our additional filing. Further, we discovered yesterday that the defendants have been removing valuable household items ahead of this hearing. Judge Reynolds' eyebrows rose. Is this true, Mrs. Winters? Margaret looked visibly uncomfortable for the first time. My clients were simply organizing personal possessions. Then they won't object to a court-ordered inventory, Judge Reynolds stated. Dad's face flushed crimson. He whispered furiously to Margaret, who raised a hand to silence him. Their credibility was crumbling visibly as the judge made notes. The friends they'd brought for support shifted uncomfortably as Richard methodically presented our evidence. Text messages begging for just enough to cover the mortgage this month. Bank transfers explicitly labeled house payment. Photos of me installing new windows while my sister sunbathed nearby. Your Honor, Richard concluded, we request an immediate injunction against property sale and expedited mediation. Mom attempted to interject, her voice taking on that familiar trembling quality that always made me back down before. Brooklyn has always been such a sensitive girl. Mrs. Harris, Judge Reynolds interrupted, sharp as a whip, this court deals in financial evidence, not character assessments. I felt gazes shifting towards me. People who had known me since childhood were suddenly seeing the situation with fresh eyes. My former high school math teacher, sitting in the back row, gave me a slight nod, something like respect in her expression. I'm ordering mediation before this proceeds further, Judge Reynolds announced. And the temporary restraining order on property sale is reinstated pending resolution. 2 days later, we gathered in the mediation room. I sat beside Richard, my posture perfect, my breathing controlled. My support network was there, too. Emily from accounting sat behind me, ready to validate my documentation methods. My therapist's voice echoed in my mind, giving me permission to protect myself. Mom and Dad entered, red-faced and defensive. Lacey trailed behind them, avoiding my gaze. They looked smaller somehow. Less intimidating than the giants who had controlled my life for decades. Richard slid a binder across the table. We're seeking a 35% equitable interest based on verifiable contributions. Dad's bluster began immediately. This is ridiculous. We're her parents. The court doesn't weigh love. Mr. Harris, Margaret, their own lawyer, responded coldly, her eyes fixed on our evidence with growing concern. It weighs evidence. Mom's tears started on cue. The mediator, a practical woman with decades of experience, merely handed her a tissue without pausing her review of documents. You kept receipts? Lacey whispered, finally meeting my eyes. You actually kept receipts? I nodded once, feeling nothing but absolute certainty. I kept everything. In the silence that followed, I saw what they finally understood. The responsible daughter they'd counted on to solve all their problems had become the responsible woman they could no longer manipulate. On the final confrontation day, the courthouse lobby buzzed with whispers as I entered, Richard at my side. 7 carefully labeled manila folders rested in my arms. Each one represented a year of my life, meticulously documented. They're offering $45,000, Richard said, checking his phone. Final offer. I almost laughed. After contributing $92,000, plus thousands in improvements, they genuinely thought $45,000 would make me walk away. The sheer predictability of their manipulation no longer wounded me. Let them know we're proceeding as planned, I replied, straightening my charcoal blazer. Richard nodded. Fair warning, he added, his silver-framed glasses catching the morning light. They've brought reinforcements. He was right. As we rounded the corner, I spotted Mom and Dad huddled with Mrs. Peterson, our longtime family friend whose church potluck casseroles had marked every milestone of my childhood. Her presence was no accident. Mrs. Peterson spotted me and approached, arms outstretched. Brooklyn, honey, this has all gone too far. Your parents are heartbroken. Are they? I kept my voice neutral, despite the flames licking at my ribcage. They're worried about losing everything, she continued, her eyes watery. They never meant. Tell them I received their settlement offer, I interrupted gently, and we'll see them inside. Her face fell. They said the house needs a new foundation. $20,000 in repairs at least. They can't afford to give you more. Another lie. The foundation inspection had passed just 18 months ago. I'd paid for it myself. My phone buzzed with Lacey's name on the screen. The 3rd call today. I silenced it without answering. Outside courtroom C, Uncle Robert materialized from a bench, his presence unexpected. He blocked my path, his bulk intimidating in the narrow hallway. You need to drop this, he muttered. Your mother is in tears every night. Is that what you want? To destroy your family over money. The irony almost made me smile. Interesting perspective, Robert. Your father built that house with his bare hands. His voice rose. And now you're what? Taking it from them. I'm claiming what's legally mine, I responded. The equity I paid for. They'll lose everything, he spluttered. You know that, right? They're selling a house with no mortgage, a house they haven't made payments on for 7 years, I replied, my voice steady. They'll be fine. His face reddened. You always thought you were better than everyone. Too good for Spokane. Too smart for your own family. Richard stepped between us. Mr. Harris, this conversation is over. Save it for the courtroom. As we walked away, my phone buzzed again. This time I answered. Brooklyn, Lacey's voice caught, a desperate plea. Please stop this. Mom and Dad will lose everything if you don't compromise. The familiar pang of guilt rose, but it no longer controlled me. They have options, Lacey. They always have. They're talking about embarrassing family stuff, she whispered, her voice conspiratorial. Things from when you were a teenager. They'll tell everyone if you make them. The threat landed cold. My rebellious phase. The older boyfriend. The night Dad found us. Ancient history, now weaponized. Let them, I answered, surprising myself with my own steadiness. I have nothing to hide. We entered the courtroom. Its wooden pews were already filling with extended family. This was never meant to be a public spectacle, but Mom and Dad had ensured an audience. 10 minutes before the hearing, Richard tensed beside me. New development, he whispered. They've found someone claiming you verbally agreed the money was a gift. Who? My stomach tightened. Thomas Wilson. Thomas Wilson. My college boyfriend. The one who borrowed money from me for tuition and never paid it back. The connection clicked immediately. Dad's fishing buddy was Thomas's uncle. Can they do that? I asked, a flicker of doubt. They can try, Richard said. But we prepared for this. Remember the receipts from the bathroom renovation? My heart sank. The contractor went out of business. I didn't have those receipts. For the first time, real doubt crept in. What if 7 years of documentation wasn't enough? Focus on what we do have, Richard said firmly. The text messages establish intent for repayment. That's our strongest evidence. The judge entered, her reputation for expertise in family financial disputes preceding her. Her steel gray hair framed sharp eyes that missed nothing. The testimony began. My parents, trying to present themselves as generous providers who simply helped their adult daughter buy into the family home. But their narrative began to unravel under questioning. So, Mrs. Harris, Judge Winters said, you're saying there was never a discussion about selling the house? Never. Mom insisted, her voice tight. This was Brooklyn's home too. Richard stood. Permission to play recording Exhibit C? Mom's voice filled the courtroom. Once we sell, you and your father can finally take that Alaska cruise. The color drained from Mom's face. Dad shifted furiously in his seat. Mr. Harris, Judge Winters leaned forward, addressing my dad. You stated you never promised to repay these funds. Is that correct? That's right, Dad said, trying to sound firm. These were gifts between family members. Richard retrieved his tablet. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit F, a text message from Robert Harris to Brooklyn, dated June 14th last year. On the screen, Dad's message appeared. Thanks for covering the property taxes again. We'll square up when the market improves. Dad stammered. That was just a figure of speech. Judge Winters' eyebrow rose. Slightly. Then came the moment I'd prepared for since that November day in the hallway. Richard wheeled in a cart holding 7 binders, each labeled by year. Your Honor, he announced, we'd like to present Brooklyn Harris's complete financial contribution record. For the next 40 minutes, the courtroom sat in stunned silence. Richard methodically mapped out every single dollar, mortgage payments, property taxes, renovations, repairs. All meticulously organized with bank statements, receipts, and communications. Miss Harris began these payments at age 22, Richard explained, increasing her contributions proportionally as her salary grew. The timeline displayed showed payments jumping from $700 monthly to $1,700 as I progressed from entry-level analyst to a senior position. And finally, Richard concluded, I'd like to present the email that prompted this legal action. The projector displayed Mom's message to the real estate agent. Brooklyn's payments were gifts. She has no legal claim. Right beside it appeared another message, sent just 3 days later. We changed the locks. You don't live here anymore. A collective murmur rippled through the courtroom. Uncle Robert stared at his shoes. Aunt Patricia's mouth hung open. The carefully constructed narrative of the ungrateful daughter shattered completely. Lacey took the stand as their final witness, her testimony crumbling under cross-examination. Did you know your parents were planning to sell the house? Richard asked. Lacey glanced at our parents, then down at her hands. Yes. Did you know they intended to exclude Brooklyn from the proceeds? A long, agonizing pause. Yes. Even though she had paid the mortgage for 7 years? She could afford it, Lacey whispered. I couldn't. The financial forensic expert testified next, calculating my total contribution at $117,300, including improvements and interest. Based on current market value, he concluded, that represents approximately a 35% equity stake in the property. Judge Winters didn't need long to deliberate. The court finds that Brooklyn Harris has established an equitable interest of 35% in the property at 1472 Ridgeline Avenue. She ordered the house sold, with proceeds divided accordingly under court supervision. My parents' attorney immediately requested an appeal. Appeal denied, Judge Winters stated firmly. The evidence is overwhelming. I sat motionless as the judgment sank in. No elation. No vindictive satisfaction. Just the immense weight lifting from shoulders that had carried it for far, far too long. Mom tried to approach as court adjourned. Brooklyn, we need to talk about this as a family. I gathered my belongings without meeting her eyes, my silence more powerful than any words. Outside, autumn sunlight bathed the courthouse steps. "Thank you, Richard," I said, my voice steady. "What happens now?" he asked. "They sell. I get my share. We move on." The reality quickly materialized in numbers. House value, $740,000. My portion, $259,000 after legal fees. Enough. Enough for a down payment in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. A place truly mine, built on foundations I could finally trust. As I walked to my car, I caught a glimpse of my family huddled together, Mom, Dad, and Lacey, already discussing their move to a rental duplex on the east side. Their universe had shifted. Its gravitational center was no longer my reliability. I didn't look back as I drove away. The road ahead belonged entirely to me now. 3 months later, the brass key felt heavy, reassuring, in my palm as I stood in the doorway of my new townhouse. Sunlight streamed through windows I selected, warming hardwood floors I chose, without anyone's input or criticism. The settlement money had made this possible. Not all of it invested here, of course. I smiled, remembering my financial advisor's approving nod. I wanted my money to work for me, I'd told her, not sit in drywall. We finalized the mortgage on half the property's value, and the other half I paid outright, creating a perfect balance between investment and security. The locksmith cleared his throat behind me. "Ready for the new deadbolts, Miss Harris?" I handed him the set of pristine locks I'd purchased yesterday. "Yes, all of them, please." As he worked, I wandered through rooms filled only with what brought me peace. No cluttered shelves of guilt-inducing family photos. No furniture selected to please anyone but myself. The walls, painted in soft sage rather than the navy my mother would have insisted upon, reflected my values, not theirs. Every corner of the space existed without their influence, without hidden agendas. For the first time in my life, my finances remained wholly my own. No support payments disguised as family obligation. No quiet transfers at midnight when someone's card was declined. The crushing weight of their expectations had lifted, finally leaving room to breathe. When the locksmith finished, he handed me 3 gleaming keys, all set. I ran my thumb over the ridges, remembering that terrible day 7 months ago when my key no longer worked in my parents' door. They had changed the locks while I was gathering documentation for my lawyer. The ultimate rejection. Now, I changed locks by choice, not necessity. Later, I placed the old brass deadbolt from my parents' house, the one I'd removed before their locksmith arrived, into a small wooden box. The last relic of the life they'd shut me out of. I closed the lid firmly and slid it onto a high shelf in my closet. That evening, an email arrived from Lacey. Its subject line dripped with familiar manipulation, family healing needed. I opened it, curious rather than anxious. Her message unfolded exactly as I predicted, a half-hearted apology, vague references to misunderstandings, subtle blame-shifting. The same tired tactics that once would have sent me spiraling into guilt now read like a predictable script. I deleted it without reply. Blocked the address. No anger surged through me, just calm certainty. The clean break remained intact. In my journal that night, I wrote, "I realized my worth isn't measured by what I can provide to others." The words flowed easily after months of therapy. My fatal flaw, over-responsibility and a hunger for approval, had been named and tamed. Reliability can exist without exploitation. Boundaries protect rather than punish. The next morning, I met with my attorney to update my will, leaving nothing to my former family. We established confidential address protection for complete peace of mind. Then I signed the paperwork creating a legal aid fund for family financial abuse victims, transforming my pain into community support. "The first recipient meets with you next week?" my attorney asked, referring to a young man whose parents had drained his college fund. I nodded. "I'll share my story." Anonymously. That weekend, friends who had supported me through the darkest days filled my new home with laughter. We exchanged meaningful gifts, not expensive, but thoughtfully chosen. Their genuine support contrasted sharply with the exploitation I had once tragically mistaken for family love. When they left, I stood at my window, watching the Seattle sunset paint the sky pink and gold. No phone in hand, constantly checking for emergency texts. No guilt about enjoying solitude. Later, I opened the wooden box one last time, studying the old brass lock before storing it away permanently. Home isn't where you're born, I whispered to the empty room that felt more like home than any place before. It's where you're valued. I closed the box with finality. Revenge burns fast, I murmured, thinking of the young man I'd soon help. Justice builds slowly and lasts longer.